If you've ever felt like the unwanted black sheep of your family, let me introduce you to Megatron Harvey Oswald Griffin. Meg has spent her entire life as an unwanted mistake, neglected, bullied, sold off, locked away, and treated like she barely exists. And just when you think it can't get worse, she finds out she might not even be her father's kid. Or worse, she might be the mother of her own baby brother. The abuse she endured would have made any sane person file a lawsuit and erase the Griffin surname. But is she really just the family's favorite punching bag, or is there something even darker at play? Let's start with her early life, where you'll see that Meg was cooked even before she set foot on Earth. From the moment she entered the world, the universe seemed to have it out for her, starting with being born to Peter and Lois Griffin. To show the kind of ordeal she was in for at birth, Peter changed her birth certificate to Megatron after her mother had already selected Megan. Now, she should have a normal, if not slightly dysfunctional suburban childhood. Family Guy had other plans, and she had a one-way ticket to being the show's favorite punching bag. From the beginning, she was neglected, insulted, and treated like an afterthought by pretty much everyone in her life. Her early seasons tried to paint her as your typical awkward teenage girl, desperate for validation, socially anxious, and just trying to get through high school without becoming a meme. The Family Guy writers instead chose to make her life a running gag. Instead of giving her a redemption arc, they doubled down on making her the embodiment of teenage misery. Constantly on the receiving end of Peter's cruelty and Lois's indifference, her life became a series of relentless humiliations.
I'm just trying to fit in.
Get out!
Honestly, if Meg ever saw therapy, her therapist would need therapy too. For someone so young, she has been through a lot. From the very first episode of Family Guy in 1999, Meg's age was loosely assumed to be 15, though it was never explicitly confirmed. By I Never Met the Dead Man, she's assumed to be 16 when she gets her driver's license, and she stays that age throughout the show's initial run. She officially turned 17 in Peter's two dads and 18 in Quagmire and Meg. She even celebrates a couple more birthdays, one in Papa Has a Rollin' Son, and another in Better Off Meg. Let's be honest, her family doesn't care enough to keep track. In Better Off Meg, they literally forgot what she looks like and assume she's a barrel. A barrel.
Hello?
Mom, where are you guys?
Who is this?
It's Meg. Where is everyone?
Who is that?
Someone who says she's Meg.
Give me that. Okay, Meg, if this is you, what's your birthday?
March 23rd.
I have no idea if that's correct. Good day, sir. Sorry about that, everyone. Now let's get back to the fair and enjoy our March 23rd.
Meg started out as the show's designated punchline, but as the seasons progressed, the writers doubled down. The family, especially Peter, doesn't just neglect her, they go out of their way to make her life miserable, bully her, humiliate her, and even physically harm her for sport. Brian, a literal dog, gets more respect than she does. At this point, you have to wonder, what did Meg do to deserve this? The answer? Absolutely nothing. She's just a plain-looking girl with shoulder-length brown hair and a signature beanie. But in the Family Guy universe, her appearance is treated as some kind of visual war crime. Her so-called ugliness is played for laughs in ways that would break a real person's psyche. In Mr. Griffin Goes to Washington, they hire an even uglier girl to stand next to her just so she looks better by comparison.
Hi, can I help you?
Yeah, some company hired me to stand next to you all day so you'd look better by comparison.
In Don't Make Me Over, two people douse themselves in gasoline and set themselves on fire, throw themselves out of a window screaming in horror after simply looking at Meg.
You need any? How do these jeans look?
And yet, none of that compares to United Griffin family history, where burglars mistake her for a boy, take her hostage, and then refuse to have their way with her because they find her so repulsive. Meg, in full desperation mode, gets offended and insists she's pretty, even demanding that they sleep with her.
Oh, no!
What'd she say?
She asked if we were gonna have our way with her.
Ew!
No, seriously, I won't scream or anything.
No, no sale.
Come on! I'm pretty!
The burglars are so traumatized that they sue her for sexual harassment.
Unfortunately, they're pressing sexual harassment charges against your daughter.
Well, that was a close call.
You know, Meg should probably get a lawyer.
At this point, Meg is one bad day away from a full-blown villain origin story. Her self-esteem is so low it might as well be 6 feet under, and every attempt she makes to fit in blows up in her face spectacularly. So when it comes to Meg's social life, or lack thereof, it's just another tragic chapter in her ongoing misery.
Hey, Meg! Hanging out with all your friends?
Hey, Will! The ocean's that way!
That's a good one, too.
She has no real friends. In fact, even her dolls would rather throw themselves in front of a moving bus than spend time with her. Meg desperately wants to be part of the cool crowd. As with everything in her life, luck isn't on her side. She once pretended to be a lesbian just to feel like she belonged somewhere. This happened when she unknowingly accepted an invitation to hang out, only to realize she had just joined the school's lesbian alliance. And instead of coming clean like any normal person, she doubled down, completely changing her personality and identity just to keep her new social circle. But as expected, the whole thing eventually became too much, and now she had to come out and admit the truth.
The first time in my life, I felt like I belonged, and I wanted it to be true. So I pretended to be something I'm not.
You're going to choose to be heterosexual?
I thought being gay wasn't a choice.
Well, not for guys.
It was wrong of me to mislead you.
In some episodes, Meg is shown at slumber parties, gossiping about boys and seemingly having friends. But don't be fooled, these girls are just as dateless and socially outcast as she is. In one Halloween episode, she and a group of girls wore masks to a party just to hide their faces and improve their chances of hooking up.
Good idea! We are so gonna hook up! I think we look hot. Totally hot.
Ugly bitches!
Meg was thrilled until she found out that the guy she finally kissed, almost went to third base with, was actually her brother. In her defense, he was dressed as Optimus Prime, so maybe in some bizarre alternate universe, Megatron and Optimus were a thing? But this was high school, and instead of a legendary battle, the only thing that got destroyed was Meg's already non-existent reputation. Her dating life is just as disastrous. I mean, her first boyfriend was a dead guy.
I'm back. I brought another picnic. You're such a good listener. You're not like the other boys.
The only people interested in her are guys like Neil, who has no options, or creeps like Quagmire, who will literally go after anything in a skirt. This doesn't take the slack off Meg. Her own romantic decisions are questionable, to say the least. In Dial Meg for Murder, she dates a prisoner named Luke. Luke later escapes, and when Meg tries to hide him, she gets caught and sent to prison herself.
How'd your parole hearing go?
Not good. Looks like I'm gonna be in here another 3 years.
Oh, Luke.
Oh, I don't expect you to wait for me, Meg.
That's not as bad as it gets. And Valentine's Day in Quahog, she goes on a date with a guy named Toby, whom she met online. The dude knocks her out, steals one of her kidneys, and disappears. But instead of being horrified, Meg holds him to his original promise of a full date together. After their wonderful date, he gives her kidney back, and she proudly keeps it in a jar in her room. No, that wasn't cute, it was just tragic. And the one time she finally managed to land a seemingly normal boyfriend, yeah, that didn't last long. In Ghost to Ego, she starts dating a guy named Anthony. For once, all of Quahog is shocked. Anthony isn't a creep, a loser, or ugly. Meg is actually proud of herself. That feeling lasts about 2 minutes before she introduces him to her family. And then Lois seduces him because, of course, she does.
Can I kiss you?
Let me ask you this. Do my gray hairs bother you?
What gray hairs?
Kiss me.
Mom, I forgot my keys. Do you know where...
But perhaps nothing tops what happened in Lego My Mego. Meg gets kidnapped and sold off to a rich man. When she informs Peter, does he rush to save her? Nope, he just accepts that she's dead and moves on. Come on guys, were you expecting anything else? Turns out the man didn't buy her as a sex slave but to marry his son, Prince Faisal. When the young prince romantically proposes, Meg gladly accepts, thinking she's finally caught a break. Just as she's settling into her new, much better reality, Stewie shows up and puts a bullet in her fiancé's brain. That wasn't the only time Meg came close to tying the knot. In Peter's daughter, she falls for a medical student named Michael Milano and soon announces that she's pregnant with his baby. Naturally, the two got engaged, but when Meg finds out she isn't actually pregnant, she comes clean to Michael, hoping he'll stay. Nah, he doesn't. Instead, he bails and leaves her at the altar. How much more unlucky can one person be? Out of sheer loneliness, Meg even ends up dating Bruce, a gay man. And if that wasn't bad enough, she actually insists on marrying him. Thankfully, that train wreck gets called off before it can go any further. But Bruce does make a comeback in a later episode, this time with his husband. And what does he ask Meg? To be a surrogate for their baby. Surprisingly, she agrees against her parents' warnings that this is an objectively terrible idea. So, Meg goes through with the implantation, carries the pregnancy to term, and gives birth to a daughter named Liza. But Bruce doesn't show up to take the baby, leaving Meg stuck with a kid. Just when you think she's been abandoned again, Bruce reveals that Meg was the one constantly asking them to delay picking Liza up. Now the real question is, why on earth would Meg want to raise a baby in the Griffin household? When Meg finally gets fed up with everyone treating her like some hideous swamp creature, she gets a full-blown makeover in Don't Make Me Over, and just like that, her attractiveness instantly skyrockets in everyone's eyes. Suddenly, she experiences a whole new reality, one of fame, desirability, and attention she's never known before. This was a wild shift considering that earlier in the episode, people were literally dousing themselves in gasoline and setting themselves on fire just to avoid looking at her. Yeah, it was that bad. During this brief moment of popularity, she loses her virginity to Saturday Night Live comedian Jimmy Fallon, of all people, as part of an elaborate cold open sketch.
There's something there's something I gotta tell you. Being with you just made me feel so alive from New York. It's Saturday night!
It's Saturday Night Live!
Oh my God!
Yeah, that wasn't a very good opening sketch, was it?
Throughout Family Guy, one thing remains painfully clear. There's no luck or love for Meg Griffin in this world, and naturally, this takes a serious toll on her emotional and mental health. There are tons of episodes that reveal the emotional struggle and crisis she goes through. In Barely Legal, she threatens to commit suicide when no one at school will be her prom date. It gets so bad that she tells her parents she's going upstairs to eat a whole bag of peanuts, and no, that wasn't just a casual snack, she's allergic to peanuts. That was a cry for help. Luckily, Brian takes pity on her and offers to be her date. At the event, a slightly tipsy Brian defends her from a bully and, big mistake, pays her a rare compliment. Meg, so starved for any kind of affection, immediately falls obsessively in love with him. And when I say obsessed, I mean obsessed. She starts wearing his dog collar, bakes him a pie with her own hair inside it, and even kidnaps him, tying him up in her room. Thankfully, the police intervened before things could hit a peak level of absurdity. Brian isn't the only poor soul Meg obsessively latched onto just for showing her a shred of kindness. When their wheelchair-bound neighbor Joe gives Meg a ride to school, she's stunned that he actually drops her off at the front, unlike her own family, who usually ditches her a block away.
Isn't that where you wanted to go?
Well, yeah, but most times people just drop me off a block away so they don't have to be seen with me.
That's gay. I don't mind being seen with you.
You don't?
Of course not.
That tiny act of decency is all it takes for Meg to develop a full-blown crush. She even starts referring to Joe as her boyfriend and takes things to the next level by slipping into his wife Bonnie's clothes while she's out of town. At first, Joe humors her out of pity, but when Meg finds out Bonnie's returning, pulls a peak Meg move, stealing Joe's gun and sneaking it into Bonnie's luggage, getting her arrested at the airport. Wait, it gets worse. Fully convinced they're meant to be, Meg literally throws herself in front of Joe's car. Imagine that kind of romantic dedication, but unfortunately for her, Joe doesn't exactly see it that way. Once she's in the hospital, he gently breaks the news and that he only likes her as a friend. Devastating blow for Meg, but a huge relief for Joe, and honestly for Bonnie too. Sure, in typical fashion, Family Guy plays these moments for laughs, but beneath the humor lies something darker. Meg's desperation for emotional validation. Her unresolved trauma spills out into obsessiveness, vices, violent behaviors, and even self-harm. In the episode Goes to Ego, Meg rips out her own tooth just to prove she's tougher than Lois.
I'll do anything. You don't know me.
Oh my God!
For someone who's constantly treated like a joke, she sure has a violent streak. And the saddest part? That aggression is just another symptom of her deep-rooted craving for validation. In one episode, after a man rear-ends Peter's car, Meg snaps, brutally beating the guy in a fit of rage.
What the hell is your problem, you dumb bimbo? God, stop!
And how does Peter, the world's most neglectful father, react? By calling her actions awesome. That one moment of approval is enough to send Meg down a path of reckless, destructive behavior, anything to impress him. Things take an even darker turn when Meg ends up in jail for harboring her fugitive boyfriend. By the time she's released, she's a completely different person. Tattoos, hardened demeanor, full-on prison mentality. For the first time ever, her family's actually afraid of her, and rightfully so. She gives them a taste of their own medicine, knocking Peter's teeth out and mercilessly beating him.
I like to toot my own horn, but I believe I hold the distinction of...
My house now, bitch. Now who's the funniest?
I know my way around a joke.
And have some humility, it'll save your life!
There better be beer in the fridge.
Boy, I liked her better when she was more predictable.
But even then, her violence is still just a symptom of something deeper. While robbing Mort's pharmacy, she bitterly admits that no one cares about her. Luckily, Brian steps in again to remind her that this isn't who she is and that she can change. At the end of the day, Brian seems to be the only one on the show who ever treats Meg with even a shred of respect. Desperate to fill the void inside her, Meg even turned to religion at some point, but in true Meg fashion, this conversion went awry when she took it way too extreme. Brian had to be the one to step in to show her the flaws in her belief. Guess his convincing argument? A just and kind God wouldn't put you in a family like this.
And what kind of god would put you in a house where no one respects or cares about you, not even enough to get you a damn mumps shot?
Damn. And you want to know just how right he is? Let's really take a look at how her family treats her. Her mother literally co-opts her into prostitution for a day just to make money for Chris's tuition fees. Let that sink in. In wasted talent, Lois forces Meg to practice the piano, and by force. I mean, she actually shackles her to an iron ball with an ankle bracelet to keep her in the house. Lois's cruelty toward Meg gets so extreme that her school lunches consist of literal food waste, peels, crusts, and just a twist a knife, taunting picture of Lois eating a turkey leg. In that same episode, Lois essentially gives up on her daughter entirely, hands her a bottle of pills and a Sylvia Plath book, and tells her, whatever happens, happens. Yeah, if you didn't catch the subtext here, she's basically telling Meg to unalive herself. Even the neighbors know that the family doesn't care about Meg. One time, Joe desperately tries to get Lois to save him from falling into a giant sewer pipe by saying this.
Joe, you're too heavy. I can't hang on.
Pretend I'm your child, Lois. Nutmeg, nutmeg.
That pretty much says it all. But to be fair, Lois isn't always a monster to Meg. There are moments where she shows genuine care, like when a teacher spreads absolute nonsense about sex education, causing Meg and other teens to settle for ear sex to keep their chastity vows. Lois steps in to correct the dangerous misinformation. And also, when she believes Meg has died and better off Meg, she actually seems heartbroken and reminisces about making dong-shaped Christmas cookies with her. Sweet, right? Well, not so fast. This is the same woman who couldn't even recognize her own daughter's voice over the phone and literally mistook Meg for a barrel, so no, she doesn't get a free pass for being a terrible parent. And then there was Chris, who once lifted up her skirt, exposing her bra, just to make Brian throw up as an excuse to take him to the vet. But that's nothing compared to what he does when the family believes Meg is dead. Instead of grieving, this dude milks the dead sister sympathy card to boost his popularity at school, scoring dates with the hottest girls. And when Meg calls him to say she's actually alive, does Chris feel relieved? Not at all. He sees her return as a threat to his social status, so he throws her into a van and locks her up in a basement somewhere only God knows where.
Hello? Hello? Where is everyone? Damn it, Chris. I don't care that you're popular now. Let me out of here!
Even Stewie doesn't sit on the sidelines. The evil genius baby takes endless joy in taunting Meg about her supposed ugliness, her virginity, and her inability to keep a boyfriend.
Oh, there, let me dry those tears. Yes, your anguish sustains me.
The only reason she doesn't seem to react much is probably because at the writer's discretion, most of the cast, except Brian, can't actually hear Stewie's speech. That being said, when Meg is kidnapped, Stewie does go all out to rescue her. So I guess sometimes even he has a soft spot for her. Speaking of her relationship with Stewie, there's a wild fan theory that he might actually be Meg's kid. The theory stems from the episode Partial Terms of Endearment, where Lois makes a joke implying that Meg was the one who gave birth to Stewie, but instead of reacting with shock or denial, Meg just doesn't react at all. Suspicious? Maybe. Some people theorize that Meg isn't actually Peter's biological daughter, but the result of one of Lois's affairs. Brian once revealed that her real father is someone named Stan Thompson, but since Meg had her headphones on at the time, she completely missed this bombshell. Honestly, that would explain a lot, especially why Peter treats her worse than anyone else. She was basically rejected from conception. On a cruise ship, he casually tells guests how he and Lois went to get an abortion, but changed their minds at the last second. Then he adds, 3 months later, our daughter Meg was born, suggesting that her birth wasn't exactly planned or even correctly timed. To top it off, she was born with a birth defect, and her parents actually tried to abandon her at a fire station shortly after. If they didn't want her so badly, giving her up for adoption would have been a much kinder option. Instead, Peter practically admits in a letter that he thought she was a house pet for the longest time. But that's actually one of the less awful things he's done to her. Constantly insults and ridicules her, physically abuses her whenever he gets the chance, and constantly farts on her.
Oh my God, Dad, you farted! That is so nasty!
No, Meg, this is crucial, all right? The sexiest thing a woman can do for a man is learn to love his gas. Love the gas, Meg. Love it! No, Meg, no. This is why we're here. This is why we're here.
In Road to Rupert, he's disgusted that Meg has to be his personal driver and spends the entire time tormenting her, at one point even setting her hat on fire while she's behind the wheel.
Ah, gross! Will you stop it? Stop it!
Hey, guys, check this out.
Hey, man.
Another time, he literally sells her just to pay off his pharmacy tab.
Up the tab, and your son can have Meg.
What?
Yep, all you gotta do is sign this contract.
Are you out of your mind? You can't sell me, you fat son son of a bitch!
Whoa! Careful getting this fish off the hook, Mort. She's got some fangs.
What do you think of that, Neil? Daddy bought you a girlfriend.
Excuse me?
Yet, somehow, he once claimed they were secret best friends only to immediately throw lemonade in her face and insist he had to keep up appearances. He even tried seducing Luke Perry to protect Meg from a libel suit, at one point saying he'd take a bullet for her, but that was a one-time thing. The very next moment, he was back to treating her like garbage, because of course he was. Finally, Meg reaches her breaking point and stands up for herself. In the episode Seahorse Seashell Party, she finally calls out her family for the years of mistreatment she's endured. She tears into Lois and Peter, rightfully labeling them as some of the worst parents imaginable.
Oh, and when you're not terrorizing the community with your impulsive escapades, you're being a total jerk to your family. You shove your daughter's face in your ass and you fart on it. If someone in the outside world could see the way you treat me, you would be in jail. See if you find this funny.
I like where this is going.
You're a fat, lazy, abusive, blue-collar Irish Catholic dad who drinks way too much and barely makes enough money to support his family. You've lived half your life and you have nothing to show for it. Your only arguable accomplishments are your kids. And look at us.
But instead of any real change, Meg's confrontation causes the entire family to spiral, turning their usual abuse on each other. It's then that Meg realizes something even more depressing. She's nothing more than a lightning rod for their dysfunction, absorbing their toxicity so they don't tear each other apart. And just when it seems like she might finally break free from the cycle, she does the most depressing and unthinkable. She apologizes. Everything snaps back to the same toxic normal, and Meg is once again the family punching bag. It's just like I said earlier, if she ever goes for therapy, therapist would need to see a therapist too, because her story is just all shades of dark and sad. But while Meg's past and present is a wild and tragic one, her future is not something even I would have anticipated. In the season 4 episode Stu and Stewie's Excellent Adventure, we get a glimpse of the Griffin family's future. Peter is still a douchebag man-child, and Chris is unsurprisingly stuck in a toxic marriage. Meg, however, undergoes a gender reassignment surgery.
Doc,
Oh, hi, Ron.
I can't stay too late. I gotta go shop for a razor. You know, for my face, where I grow my beard.
Okay, we get it, Ron. You're a guy.
I guess for everyone in the show that always thought she was a guy, there wouldn't be much confusion now. What's interesting about the gender change is that it's an interesting nod to the episode Quagmire's Dad, where Meg compliments Ida after her gender reassignment surgery, only for Ida to casually assume Meg has had the procedure too. While it would be interesting to see what a male Meg would be like, I doubt Family Guy would maintain that plot, and so this future will likely change at some point. But then, after everything Meg has endured over the years, she deserves a happy ending, wherever that may be. She embodies Family Guy's dark humor at its finest, a character so ridiculously unlucky that it's hilarious, but also kind of depressing if you think about it for too long. Actually, you don't even need to think about it for long, it's painfully obvious. Yet, despite the constant mistreatment, Meg has remained strong. Even when she veers toward the dark side, she somehow manages to pull herself back. Take the time she robbed a nursing home. Racked with guilt, she returned everything she stole. For someone who's essentially a walking case study on how bad life can get when no one cares, she just keeps showing up. If nothing else, that level of persistence has to count for something. So there, we've covered the entire life story of Meg Griffin. But if you think her story is the darkest, then you should check out the next video on Quagmire's life story and compare it for yourself.